Player 1.
You missed me, big! Put your hands up!
Light gun games are always good for a game or two in the arcades. No complicated move systems to learn, no need to figure out what to do. These are the very definition of pick up and play games. Taito had really revived this kind of game with Operation Wolf and Operation Thunderbolt, but both of those games had the gun mounted on the cabinet. Konami had decided to take a different approach and include a 6-shooter style gun that was attached to the cabinet with a cable that was about a metre in length. This allowed the player to shoot up close or from maximum distance, which was like the old rear projector shooting games of the 1970s in a roundabout way. Instead of drawing sprites, Konami opted to use digitized images of people, mostly actors, for the in-game visuals. This gave the game a more realistic feel to it, if you could call fuzzy digitized graphics realistic.
Help me! You missed me, big!
As regular viewers of my channel will know, I hate digitized graphics. I always have done. But in this game, it does make very little difference. That was until 1993, when it was featured in the United States Senate hearings on video games. But more on that later. The Lethal Enforcers arcade game was a 2-player game, and I always found this kind of 2-player game a real hoot to play. A mate of mine was a real crack shot, but I was nothing like a crack shot, and in 2-player games with this mate, I could never get a higher score than him. But that never ever put me off playing these kind of games. And after a while of adjusting your eyes to the fuzzy digitized graphics, you find yourself getting really immersed in the game. The arcade cabinet was absolutely huge compared to other cabinets, but the screen was not massive. So the immersion came from the atmosphere the game produced, and not the cabinet.
Don't shoot! Help me! Eat lead, copper! Help me! Put your hands up!
Lethal Enforcers has 6 stages. During each stage, the player must shoot the armed robbers without harming any civilians or fellow policemen. One shot is enough to kill most enemies, and at the end of each stage, a boss must be killed in order to complete that stage. Enemies are easily identifiable as they always seem to wear sunglasses, ski masks or gas masks, while fellow police officers and civilians are always barefaced. But the boss character sometimes will have his face exposed, but this battle is fought where there are no civilians present. The game is viewed from a first-person perspective. The player can acquire upgraded weapons during the course of play. A 357 Magnum, a semi-automatic pistol, a combat shotgun, an assault rifle, a submachine gun, or a grenade launcher. The submachine gun and grenade launcher can only be used once, while other weapons can be reloaded like the service revolver. Losing a life reverts the player's weapon to the revolver. The game ends when all lives are lost, unless the player chooses to continue. Along the way, extra lives can be earned per 2000 points scored. There are bonus points for destroying certain targets, and you get 8 points per enemy shot.
You missed me, pig! Freeze!
As I said, this game is the very definition of pick up and play, and this was a game that could be found everywhere. Arcades, cinemas, chip shops. I even seen it in a petrol station one time. But no matter where I seen it, if I was with my mate, we would end up having a go on it. This kind of game was his forte, and he had an unbelievable eye for the target. He really did. The arcade game was really successful and proved to be a real hit with gamers and critics alike. So there was no doubt in my mind that it would get a port for the home consoles. The question was though, would it be better on the Super NES or the Mega Drive? The Mega Drive did have a better light gun in my opinion. The Menacer was more like a gun, whereas the Super Scope was more like a bazooka. And it looked absolutely ridiculous. So a tough decision lay ahead.
Player one.
Home versions were released for the Super NES, Sega Mega Drive and Mega CD. The home versions make use of the Konami Justifier, a revolver-shaped light gun which came packaged with the game. A standard controller can also be used in lieu of the light gun in these versions. My mate had opted to get the Super NES version. He had just recently acquired a UK Super Nintendo, and this was one of his early purchases. But as this was Nintendo, some censorship was in play. No blood is shown when a player or criminal dies. Instead, the screen will flash light green or light blue to indicate that a player lost a life. The Super NES port is a very good port of the arcade. It still has those fuzzy digitized graphics of course, which the Super NES was better at handling than the Mega Drive in my opinion. And the soundtrack and the effects were all amazingly close to the arcade. Obviously, the gameplay is going to be the same as the arcade. It's point and shoot, right? And the bundled Justifier pistol actually worked amazingly well too. But the inclusion of the Justifier sent some American old farts into overdrive. Lethal Enforcers gained controversy for its use of photorealistic imagery and was one of the video games that was part of the 1993 United States Senate hearings on video games, led by Senators Joe Lieberman and Herb Kohl. Lieberman, during C-SPAN's coverage of the hearings, showed Nintendo and Sega the Konami Justifier that was bundled with the game, and stated that it looked too much like a real revolver. At the time, it was pulled from toy stores such as Toys R Us, along with Night Trap and Mortal Kombat, which were also part of the hearings. Now, how the hell can anyone say this looks too much like a real revolver? It's blue, for crying out loud, and has a cable dripping from its handle. I personally did not see what the fuss was all about. In the US, where gun ownership is enshrined into the Constitution, young adults and kids alike have all seen this kind of gun before. And I bet some Second Amendment loving parents had even taken their 10-year-old kids to a shooting range. I just didn't get it at all. But there is no such thing as bad publicity. And all this did was make Lethal Enforcers a must-have game for young American males. And so it flew off the shelves before it got pulled. And this rarity means the game goes for silly money now on the retro scene. My mate loved this game, but I have to admit, I did prefer playing it in the arcades. And I think he did too. But for the home, it was plenty good enough. Lethal Enforcers has a sort of mixed legacy. It was an enjoyable game to play, but its use of so-called photorealistic visuals meant it was destined for scrutiny by overzealous parents and governing bodies, and this led to its contribution of the gaming rating system, which in turn led to film style classifications here in the UK. But that itself is a video for another time. And that was my look at Lethal Enforcers. If you like this video, then please do give me a sub and a thumbs up, or maybe even a comment or two below about your memories or thoughts on Lethal Enforcers. And a massive, huge, big thank you to all of those who have subscribed and commented on my channel. Your comments, feedback and support really do go a long way in helping the channel grow, and I do appreciate all of the support. So thank you from me. And that's all from me, folks. Thanks for watching.